Hey everybody, and welcome to Let's Look at Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons. This is a really nice post-pack surprise to come back and find out that one of the year's most critically acclaimed and hotly anticipated games that were originally released on Xbox Live Arcade like 3 weeks ago is already out on Steam with one of the shortest exclusivity windows for a big game like this that I have ever seen. And that's awesome. More people get a chance to experience it, myself included. So I avoided playing it on the Xbox because I wanted to play the PC version. Now it's out. It's on Steam. It's 15 bucks. What is it? Developed by Starbreeze Studios and published by 505 Games, Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons is a single-player co-op platform, and that's going to sound weird. It is a platformer which is one player only, at least as far as I know. I've never seen the option for multiplayer or local or otherwise. But you play as two people, and you have to work together with yourself in order to accomplish objectives. It's a puzzle platformer. You're not just moving crates and boxes, though, to hit switches. You're doing some innovative stuff, interacting with the environment, and it's got a very, very touching story. That might seem a little bit confusing, and in fact, it is a little bit confusing, especially the first time you play it. It's hard to get coordinated with yourself, and that sounds weird. You will see why. But as time goes on, this really blossoms. I've spent about an hour so far, which if we go to play here, you can see is basically 3 chapters complete, one of which is just the prologue, which is only about, 5 minutes long, basically just teaches you the controls. But each one of these so far has been another, 25 minutes to half an hour without even messing up on any of the puzzles very much. I hear that it's a pretty short game. I'm not at liberty to say how short it is because I haven't finished the entire thing. What I will say is in my hour with Brothers so far, I'm very, very excited to play through the rest of the game. So why don't we load into chapter 1 here? Aw, no. Well, I'm on chapter 3, so I shouldn't lose progress on, well, whatever. I like the game enough that I will beat the second chapter again if I have to. I mean, might play through one entire chapter here because it's kind of a good video length, or we might stop a little bit early. So I'm just going to try to remember where we are here. But the gameplay of Brothers, we'll talk about the gameplay first before we talk about the story. It's very, very, very simple. So essentially, you control 2 brothers. One of them you control with the left half of your controller. I should mention this right off the top. I should have mentioned it earlier. When you try to buy Brothers on Steam, it pops up a big warning and says you must have a controller to play this game. I don't know if that's 100% true because when you boot up the game, there is an options menu where you can configure your keyboard. But buyer beware, do your own research on that if you don't have a controller. I'm using my 360 controller because it's highly recommended. But yes, you control Big Brother using the left side of your controller and Little Brother using the right side of your controller. What that means, it's basically like a movement and one action game. So you have movement and an action button, and that's how you solve your puzzles, essentially. So if I bring both of my brothers up here, you have to control them simultaneously, which can be very, very confusing, but it's something you adapt to very, very quickly as well, and it's totally novel. I've never played a game like this. So I just walked up to her with Big Brother, and then I did my action. And you can see that I did a little sweeping there. And I walk over with Little Brother and I can do my action. Remember, there's only one interaction button, so it's not like there's any other options that I can do here. And what's really cool about this, and the reason I wanted to come over here and kind of demonstrate something that was not necessarily related to the main quest of the story mode, is because the game does a really good job, even though there's no spoken word in... as far as I can tell, I should do more research before I say this. But I believe all of the in-game, like, spoken dialogue, of which there is a lot, is in a made-up language, or it's a language that I certainly don't understand and I'm not familiar with it. But the game still does a very, very good job of, painting good portraits of these characters. Like, I'll do this again. You can see that Big Brother picks up the broom and he just sweeps. He's like, here, let me help. He's very productive, very pragmatic might be a good way to put it. And then Little Brother, he's a little bit more creative. He's a little bit more of a hellraiser. He's a troublemaker, but he's also very skilled at certain things like music, basically, and play, and, interfacing with animals and stuff like that. So we've got 2 very different personalities here. So let's run down here. And the basic story of what's going on here, in the prologue we do find out, and I hope I'm not spoiling too much here, but in the prologue we find out that these boys' mother has died. And she drowned, basically, on a boat while the younger brother was watching but couldn't help her. And then the father is in a very, very bad state. And I'm not sure if it's that he was also on the boat, but he ended up getting back on the boat instead of drowning or what. But he seems very, very sick. And we are tasked with getting the cure, but it obviously is in a faraway town. So we're going to start with some very, very simple puzzles here. This is our quest to, as far as I can tell, get the cure to our father's disease. So we're going to push open this gate. It's pretty obvious what you can and cannot interact with the game. Also, if you're the kind of person who gets stuck in these kind of games a lot, check it out. You can just, use the left trigger as Big Brother, and he will point to your next objective, which is really nice. This is not an open world game. It is mostly linear. I've never gotten lost, at least in the time that I've spent so far. And this is exactly the characterization I was going to talk about earlier. So he plucks the strings, and he's just not very good at it, and he's like, well, you know, shove off, old man. What are you doing here, Jeffrey Tambor? But then the little brother plays it, and he's actually, like, really good. So, you know, I really like the way that the game allows you to get a feel for who each of these characters are without actually, like, at the start menu screen or something being like, little brother's the artsy one, you should use him to blah, blah, blah. Big brother's the guy who wants to get things done. Like, I much prefer this kind of minimalistic style of narrative, for sure. Additionally, you know, I'm not going to talk to everybody that we meet because some of this stuff is not essential, but it's also, you know, inherent to the joy of the game. Like, if you want to play this through for yourself, I don't want to have necessarily spoiled absolutely everything for you. But suffice it to say, if you see a person or an object in the environment, you can likely interact with it. There's two games that this really reminds me of that I wanted to talk about a little bit and kind of lampshade right off the top. One of them is Papo and Yo. I think particularly with its, like, narrative elements, and the fact that it's a story, definitely a heavily story-focused puzzle platformer. Papo and Yo is definitely on there. And additionally, I really kind of feel like this reminds me of Limbo in the minimalist way that the game handles both, like, giving the player instruction and the story itself, stark changes in the environment, and it's very visually striking, even though it doesn't necessarily look like it right now. Like, I could forgive you if you say, like, this doesn't look that impressive right now. You know, keep in mind this was, you know, originally released on the Xbox 360, which is an aging piece of hardware. But there are some really, really good moments of art design specifically, where you'll be, like, moving through the top of a level. They really give you, like, a sense of scale. Like, you'll be moving through the top of a level, and you'll be able to look down and see, like, the parts of the level that you've already done. Kind of like, you know, something I really like about Dark Souls, the ability to see other places that you've already been to, but it gives you a sense that the place you're in is, like, enormous, right? It gives you a sense of the kind of size of where you are. So this is one of the first real puzzles that you kind of come across where you have to really have kind of like asynchronous interaction with the brothers. Every time I say with the brothers, I feel like I'm talking about the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. But anyway, basically the one action in this case is that you can provide a diversion or a distraction. You know, it's like playing Splinter Cell or something, and this guy's gonna come over here, and I think he automatically goes for, like, the closest person, the closest brother, unless you are whistling, in which case he'll be attracted from afar. So we could probably do this. And all we had to do here was get around the dog. So this is one of the first puzzles that we really go through in the chapter, and it's this specific area is going to be one that we're going to be able to see from the top of this level once we get a little bit further. Now, this is not a game necessarily where it's like Trine, where each person has their own strengths and weaknesses, but there are some moments, I'm not sure if we can just walk over this, I think we can, but there are some moments where, like, each brother has their own skill, but it's not like a wizard and a rogue, like, they don't have different tools, but, you know, just physical differences between them that make one person ideal for solving a puzzle versus another one. For example, there will occasionally be fences, and they'll have bars on them, and it'll be impossible. This is actually a really good example right here. It'll be impossible for the big brother to fit through the bars, but because little brother's a little tinier, he can just turn sideways and slip through the bars and access some different areas, then let big brother in later, or, you know, get an objective and then bring it back. Similarly, in this situation, neither of them are tall enough to get up here by themselves. Like, we can hit the action button with, oh, we probably should have done it this way first. We'll hit the action button with little brother, and he's like, I can't quite make it there. But if we hit the action button with big brother, and then run over and hit the action button with little brother, then he'll get vaulted up there, and then once he is up there, he can push down the rope here. Now, I think, you know, I really like this single-player kind of co-op style. It's something I've never seen before, and it really does, first off, get confusing at times. Like right there, I just wanted to make sure that, you know, the guy on the left side of the screen was my leftmost brother, whereas the guy on the right side of the screen was my rightmost brother, just to make it, oh god, I'm sorry, little bro, just to make it simpler on my brain here. That being said, I think one of the complaints I could totally see people making about this game is, like, why not just add, I wonder if he can make that. He can, okay. Why not just add like an online co-op mode? I don't necessarily have something that I can offer in rebuttal of that. All I can really say is that I think that might take away from the single-player experience. In a lot of games, it adds to it, of course, because you have, you know, someone with you that you can work together to solve puzzles with. But in this situation, it's not difficult to control all of your people at exactly the same time. Again, it's one button per person. You're not doing, like, necessarily complicated things. It's more about just divining or figuring out what to do in your head and then eventually putting it into motion, which is not that difficult. So one thing we can do here, and I should probably, you know, I'm breezing through the puzzles a little bit here just to make sure that the video doesn't go on crazy long. But this is another opportunity to show off an interesting mechanic, which is now we've got the brothers separated. You might be wondering, like, can I just take one person and just run off? And the answer to that is no. If I try to take Big Brother any further than this, he'll start shouting. And that's the game's way of saying, like, I can't go any further. Like, you got to get my brother over here. So what you do, you know, obviously we can't cross this bridge without having the bridge down. If the bridge is up, we can't walk over it, which I probably should have demonstrated, but I assume, you know, you've played games like this before and understand. We can have our little brother stop working there. And if we put the sheep on here, he'll run around in the wheel, as animals are wont to do, and then we will cross over the bridge ourselves, and we'll be able to take both brothers with us. The game does a very good job of tutorializing things without deliberately putting up a you know, a pop-up menu that basically, or a pop-up prompt that just says, like, this is how you do this, and then, or like it has a ghost guy do it for you, and then it's just like, repeat his actions. Despite the fact that the game doesn't really lampshade how you should do things, or just decidedly, deliberately tell you how to do things, I've never really gotten stuck in, this is the moment, by the way, that I thought was really visually striking, where you can look down and you can see, like, that dog area down there. So I guess the entire area is all loaded in at once, so there's some kind of, you know, programming magic going on here that I'm not familiar with. But in any case, despite the fact that, again, things are not deliberately or distinctively just put up there in an explicit prompt, I've never gotten stuck, and I think that's because all the stuff that you do, it's pretty simple. You could call this, at least so far in the time that I've played, a pretty easy puzzle platformer, but all the stuff that you do is also, like, really intuitive. You're just mostly climbing things, or you'll be like, okay, I'm not tall enough to get up here, what can I do? And there will be something that you can interact with. I don't think it's a game where the value, at least in the hour I've spent so far, has come from, you know, feeling a real sense of reward or accomplishment when you defeat a difficult puzzle. I think it's more from just, you know, the fluidity of getting through the game, the narrative style of the game, the visual style of the game, and really the really touching core of the game as well. Even a moment like this, which I am loath to talk over, you can probably hear some of the, like, in-game gibberish dialogue. I hope it's not actually a language, in which case that would come across probably as a little bit offensive. But, you know, we come across this troll or ogre man here, and he's crying, and we don't know why he's crying. We will find out later. Well, you won't unless you actually pick up the game. But you can look at this, and you can garner some clues, right? You can be like, oh, there's two beds there. The beds have a heart at the end of them. Where's his wife? Like, we don't know. But again, this is something that will become a little bit more clear if you play through the second chapter of the game. Again, I don't know how many chapters there are, but I am looking forward to finding out. This is a game where, in the first hour that I spent with it, I was like, this is awesome. And genuinely, oh, let's get these guys switched around so I can be a little bit more fluid with my movement. Genuinely, you know, this game is emotional. I mean, I'm not saying I have burst into tears or anything like that so far, but it's been a game where you care about the characters despite the fact that you never hear them speak a word. Maybe they're saying, like, I don't know, something incredibly offensive or racist, but you know them well enough to be like, they wouldn't do that. Occasionally we come across these benches, by the way, which are basically the game's way of saying, like, hey, why don't you just sit down and just take a look at this for a while? You know, on a technical level, it's not the most beautiful looking game, and I think I could be forgiven for saying that. But artistically, it's really, really nice, especially, you know, with the lighting here. You'll see dynamic shadows that come across all the time in the game, which is super cool. So this man is going to help us get to the start of Chapter 2. This is actually going to be like a perfect length for the video. So occasionally, there will be NPCs, and the NPCs are usually just another puzzle to interact with, essentially. So these guys are going to lift us up here, and we'll move on. Oh, we got to get him to grab on there. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about this game so far in my experience with it. This is a game that I was really, really thrilled to see was actually available on PC as soon as it was, and I'm really glad that it's not confined to a specific platform. I have nothing against the Xbox 360. I know that, you know, certain people have problems with Microsoft as a company, but it's just nice to see that this game could get out to a wider audience now, and we'll come down here and continue onwards. One of the other things I wanted to talk about is the characters are mostly symmetrical. I touched on this briefly, but there are some other asymmetries that do become important. There's another example of the dynamic shadows there, by the way. But the asymmetries, they do factor in occasionally. Like, for example, little brother can't swim, so the way that you traverse water, if it's deeper than, you know, just wadeable water, is by having the big brother swim, and then the little brother grabs onto his back. So, you know, you really get the sense that these characters are like a family. They trust each other. They are adept at working together, and it just feels like good and right. That's the only way I really know how to describe it. In terms of puzzle platforms that I played this year, I think this one, at least, again, in the limited amount of time that I've spent with it so far, is the best one that I've played so far. Papo Nio's totally cool as well. Don't get me wrong. I think Papo Nio is a really significant game that a lot of people really like because it has a very, you know, good message. As well as interesting gameplay. Brothers, I think, you know, not that everything has to be a competition, but I do think Brothers trumps it just a little bit. I'm having a little bit more fun with it so far, and I feel like it's a little bit more relevant to me. I'm not sure if it's more universally relevant, but again, I probably haven't played enough of the game to necessarily say that, you know, it's the definitive puzzle platformer of the generation or the year or anything like that. What I will say is I can totally understand why everybody who played it in the 360 iteration was in love with it. So yeah, there's very, very little negative that I can say about Brothers so far, except for the fact, and again, I'm loath to mention this for a number of reasons, but I have heard that the #1 complaint about the game is that it's a little short, and, you know, $15 is definitely on the premium side of indie pricing, but, again, I don't even like bringing up that subject all that much anymore. Because it can be a frustrating one to deal with. Suffice it to say, if you don't have the financial means to pick up a game that is not necessarily going to, you know, give you 2 or 3 months of playtime, I understand where you're coming from, but that's not necessarily a knock on the game either. It's just the reality of the situation, and that's okay. The other thing is, I definitely do not think this is the kind of game for people who go into a game expecting a staggering challenge and one that they're going to have to overcome. That being said, that doesn't really matter to me. If you're the kind of person who believes that games are kind of about the overall experience, I don't really know how you could have a bad time with Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons. I always try to say A Tale of Two Songs, which doesn't even make any sense. Maybe that'll be the DLC. You know, it's even got a gimmick. It's not a gimmicky platformer. At first you might think so because you're controlling, you know, both of these. Oh no, you can reach a fail state, by the way, if you let one of the brothers plunge to his death. But yeah, you know, it might seem gimmicky at first. It's like, oh, the Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons is the game where you control both people at the same time. That's probably the easiest way to describe it and to get people to recognize it. But after like, you know, 5 or 10 minutes when you get used to the control scheme, you don't even notice it anymore. It's just how you play. Like, this whole time, I haven't been really consciously thinking about what the heck I've been doing. I've just been kind of doing it. So, when Trollman gets here, I can hear his footsteps and kind of see his back in the background. This will represent the end of the first chapter, which I've kind of breezed through. It's always worth noting that when you're playing a game that focuses on puzzles, that, you know, if you're watching someone play it for their second time, it's certainly going to be a lot faster than if you watch someone play it for their first time. I did want to point out, by the way, that the, you know, oh, well, I guess I have to get, never mind then. We'll ignore that point. We are going to jump down here, though. Again, we got to trust this guy, right? It kind of reminds me of, like, it's got the heart of, like, a kid's movie, and I mean that in the best way possible, you know? It's very feel-good, touching, but there's also, like, really palpable senses of danger, because, you know, you don't have a gun, you don't have a sword, you're not going to chop anybody up. There hasn't really been any combat that I've encountered so far, with one exception, which wasn't even really combat. It was just kind of like solving a puzzle to defeat an enemy. I guess 2 examples. Here's an example, by the way, of how you have to use the little brother to, or use the big brother to swim, if you have the little brother with you. But in any case, I totally forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, keep in mind that, you know, the first time that you play through these, with the exception of this chapter, which you've now seen all of the puzzles for, but it's the first chapter of the game, you got to show it off somehow, right? The chapters will take you a little longer. This probably took me like 25 minutes my first time through, and the second chapter took me maybe even a little bit longer, because I did fail a couple of puzzles. But it's definitely not a game that's based on trial and error. It's more like look at the situation and you'll figure it out. So this is Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons. I hope you can kind of divine from my tone, or tell from my tone, that I think this is one of the best puzzle platformers that I've played so far this year. Intensely intriguing game. Looking forward to 100%. I will be finishing the rest of this game. And, you know, again, if you have the means to spend on a game like this, and you're not the kind of person who will resent themselves or resent me for telling you to buy this, even though it might only be, you know, a short afternoon's worth of experience, by all means, check out the link in the video description below. Pick up the game on Steam. I'm not sure if it's available direct through the developer's website, but again, $15 on Steam. Also available on Xbox Live Arcade. I hope it comes to PS3, PSN, or, you know, it would even work on Vita, actually, at some point, because, you know, that'd be totally awesome, again, to open a game like this up to a wider audience. I'm gushing a little bit. I'm going to stop, but suffice it to say, Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons has very quickly become one of the games that I'm looking forward to finishing to see where it ends up on my best of 2013 list. Probably a little bit premature to say that. But as always, thanks for watching. I'm just being honest. Check the link in the video description below to get to the Steam store page if you're interested in picking this up. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider showing your support, leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing if you want to see more First Impressions videos. For the third time, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.